Have you ever stopped to think about who might have been regarded as the most handsome man mentioned in all of the scriptures? Hello, my dear viewers, and welcome once again to our channel, the channel where we take an in-depth look at the remarkable narratives within the Bible. Stories that have inspired and touched countless hearts and minds throughout the ages. Today, we are going to delve into one of the most riveting and heart-wrenching accounts found in the scriptures. The remarkable rise and tragic fall of Absalom, who is described as the most handsome man in the entire Bible. Picture someone whose sheer beauty was so striking that his mere presence could command attention and turn heads wherever he appeared. Yet beneath that captivating beauty lay an ambition so fierce that it would pave the way for betrayal, rebellion, and ultimately devastating tragedy. The story of Absalom is far more than a tale of outward beauty. It serves as a potent reminder of the perilous consequences of unchecked ambition and misplaced values. His life illustrates that, regardless of how attractive or charismatic a person may be, genuine greatness is always determined by the qualities within the heart. This lesson resonates profoundly even in our modern world, where outward appearances and the pursuit of power so often overshadow the importance of character and moral virtue. As we delve deeper into Absalom's life, you'll witness a story brimming with themes of love, betrayal, ambition, and the heavy price that rebellion can exact. This narrative offers much more than a simple window into the distant past. It carries with it timeless truths and lessons that remain relevant for us to learn from even today. Before we begin, I'd like to take a quick moment to kindly remind you to hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. If this message resonates with you and you feel others could benefit from it, please consider sharing it with your church group, your family, and your circle of friends. Let's work together to spread these vital lessons as far and wide as we can, so that we may all grow together in both wisdom and faith. Now allow me to introduce you to Absalom, a man whose extraordinary and breathtaking beauty was matched only by the deep tragedy that defined his life. Imagine a man so utterly flawless that not a single imperfection could be found on him, from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. His hair was so extraordinary that when he cut it each year, its weight was a staggering 2.2 kilograms, a detail that is hard to forget. That's certainly not the kind of detail you come across in everyday life, is it? However, Absalom's striking physical appearance was merely the surface of a much more complex and profoundly dramatic tale, one overflowing with intrigue and heartbreak. He was the son of King David, the very same David who became legendary for defeating Goliath with nothing more than a sling and a stone. Yet in stark contrast to his father, Absalom did not build a reputation for courage or faith. Instead, he became known for his rebellious nature and an insatiable thirst for power. Before we go any further into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. As the sun gently rose over the city of Jerusalem, the streets and marketplaces began to stir with vibrant life and activity. From the grandeur of the royal palaces to the bustling alleys of the streets, Israel was in the midst of an era marked by remarkable prosperity. With David, the divinely chosen king, at its helm, nearly 3 decades had passed since the time the young shepherd famously defeated Goliath with nothing but a sling and a smooth stone. Now David stood as the undisputed ruler over a unified and increasingly powerful kingdom. Through his leadership, the 12 tribes of Israel had at last come together in unity. Their enemies had been defeated, and Jerusalem had flourished into not only a thriving political capital, but also the spiritual epicenter of the nation, housing the tabernacle of God. The presence of God resided in the city of David, and the melodies of psalms and prayers of praise echoed through the hills and valleys. Israel's borders stretched further than ever, its people prospered abundantly, and neighboring nations lived in awe and fear of Israel's growing might. This was truly a golden era, a time when dreams were fulfilled and divine promises came to fruition. Yet behind all the dazzling royal splendor, dark and ominous clouds were quietly forming. The brilliant exterior of the kingdom concealed the growing fractures that were beginning to emerge within David's own household. His affair with Bathsheba, along with the murder of Uriah, continued to cast a long and unspoken shadow over his reign. The foreboding words of the prophet Nathan lingered like a haunting presence within the palace walls. The sword will never leave your house. Amidst this backdrop of glory interwoven with hidden sorrow, Absalom, the third son of David, was coming of age. Born in Hebron and later raised in Jerusalem, the young prince grew up in an environment surrounded by immense power and influence from the very beginning. He observed the dazzling grandeur of the kingdom, but he was also acutely aware of the hushed palace intrigues and the ambitions that simmered just below the surface. Absalom developed into an astute observer, gaining insight into the delicate nature of power, the undeniable sway of appearances, and the magnetic pull of charisma. He watched his father, the mighty King David, a man adored by the people and chosen by God, but also one deeply burdened by the lingering consequences of his past mistakes. He also observed his older brothers, the presumed heirs to the throne, who seemed both tantalizingly close to power and yet frustratingly out of reach. It was during this time that seeds of ambition and rebellion began to firmly take root in Absalom's heart. While Israel basked in the glory of its golden age, an unseen storm was brewing, one that would soon threaten to shake the very foundations of the kingdom. This became the stage for an unforgettable tale of love, betrayal, unparalleled beauty, and heart-rending tragedy. A story that would be retold for generations to come. It is a story that serves as a poignant reminder that even in times of great glory, the human heart remains a battlefield where virtue and unrestrained desire are locked in a constant struggle. David, the king chosen and anointed by God, was a man of profound contrasts, a courageous warrior and a tender poet, a commanding leader and a deeply repentant sinner. His numerous wives and concubines had borne him many sons, each of whom carried the heavy burden and privilege of royal bloodline. Among all of these sons, Absalom stood out unmistakably. Born to Maacah, a princess of Geshur, Absalom inherited his mother's striking and exotic beauty alongside his father's charismatic presence. Even from a very young age, Absalom had a way of drawing attention and turning heads wherever he went. His dark, glossy hair became a subject of admiration and conversation throughout all of Israel, and his regal demeanor made him seem like the very embodiment of what a prince ought to be. However, Absalom was not the firstborn son in David's lineage. Before him stood Amnon, David's eldest son born to Ahinoam, and Chileab, the son of Abigail. The presence of these older brothers cast a long shadow over Absalom's personal ambitions. Tensions within the royal household ran high as the various mothers vied for power and influence, each one striving to secure a promising future for her own son. Absalom observed everything with keen and calculating eyes, mastering the intricate art of political maneuvering and manipulation from an early age. His sister Tamar, celebrated for her exceptional beauty, was said to rival even Absalom's own striking appearance. The love Absalom felt for his sister was deep and fiercely protective, representing one of the rare genuine bonds in a world otherwise dominated by self-interest and political agendas. As Absalom grew older, his popularity among the people of Israel increased significantly. His innate charisma and his breathtaking appearance elevated him to the status of a favorite among the people throughout all of Israel. Absalom possessed a remarkable ability to make each person he encountered feel unique, and this skill allowed him to effortlessly captivate crowds wherever he went. David, observing his son from afar, found himself feeling a mixture of pride and unease. In Absalom, David saw many reflections of his own qualities: the gift of leadership, magnetic charisma, and an unrelenting ambition. Yet David couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that something darker resided within his son, a deep, insatiable hunger for power that gave him cause for concern. The haunting words of Nathan's prophecy continued to reverberate in David's mind. "The sword will not depart from your house." David pondered whether Absalom was the living embodiment of this ominous curse, or if he could be the leader that Israel desperately needed. At the same time, whispers and rumors began circulating throughout the palace and along the bustling streets of Jerusalem. Absalom, the enchanting prince, adored by the people and admired for his striking beauty. Absalom, the cunning and ambitious manipulator. Absalom, whose breathtaking outward appearance concealed a heart that was gradually becoming consumed by darkness. A tragedy of monumental biblical proportions was unfolding, a tale of deep brotherly love, painful betrayal, relentless revenge, and extraordinary beauty, which would ultimately serve as both a blessing and a curse. The exceptional beauty of Absalom was, in many ways, a double-edged sword. On one hand, it earned him widespread admiration and favor among the people. People of all ages and backgrounds, whether young or old, wealthy or poor, found themselves captivated by Absalom. Whenever Absalom spoke, others stopped and listened with rapt attention. When Absalom made a request, people were quick to respond and fulfill it. Absalom's remarkable appearance seemed to serve as a tangible sign of divine favor, as though it was evidence of God's blessing upon David's household. Yet this very beauty became the fuel for Absalom's growing vanity, further amplifying his already towering ambitions. Absalom started to perceive himself as far more than just another prince in the royal line. He became utterly convinced that he alone was the one truly worthy of inheriting David's throne. After all, wasn't he the very embodiment of what royalty should look like? Shouldn't someone as majestic and regal as he was be the one destined to rule? Within the confines of the palace, Absalom's beauty sparked both jealousy and resentment among those around him. His brothers, especially Amnon, the eldest, began to view him as an increasing and dangerous threat. At the same time, David's senior advisors harbored deep distrust toward Absalom, seeing him as a prince more concerned with his outward appearance than with the serious duties of leadership. Over time, Absalom's striking beauty became the stuff of legend, celebrated not only across Israel, but also in distant lands. Foreign envoys returned to their homelands with tales of a prince whose stunning allure seemed to rival that of the gods themselves. Young women dreamed of becoming his bride, while young men admired him and aspired to emulate his charm and presence. Yet beneath the surface of his charm and flawless appearance, a deep and growing darkness began to take root in Absalom's heart. What should have been a blessing in his life, his beauty, ultimately became a kind of prison. He yearned to be appreciated for more than his outward appearance, yet he was deeply afraid of losing the power and influence that his beauty afforded him. One day, Absalom made a quiet but firm vow to himself that he would prove his true worth to the world. He swore to show everyone that he was far more than just a handsome face or a symbol of physical perfection. He resolved that he would rise to become king, no matter the cost or the sacrifices required. Little did he realize that this vow would place him on a path leading to both fleeting glory and ultimate destruction, teaching him that true beauty is born from within, and that even the most physically attractive man can descend into the darkest of places. The start of Absalom's downward spiral began with Amnon, the eldest son of David. As the presumed heir to the throne, Amnon was overtaken by forbidden desires, and his gaze had fallen upon Tamar, Absalom's beloved sister. His uncontrollable lust transformed him into a mere shadow of the man he was meant to be. Then came one fateful day. Blinded by his consuming desires, Amnon committed an unspeakable and horrific act. He deceitfully lured Tamar into his chambers under false pretenses and violently assaulted her, cruelly robbing her of her innocence. Tamar's heart-wrenching cries for help rang through the palace halls, yet no one came to her rescue. When Absalom learned of what had transpired, something deep within him irrevocably changed. The deep love he held for his sister hardened into an icy and unyielding fury. The once bright and lively spark in his eyes was replaced with a chilling and determined darkness. He offered Tamar comfort and vowed to exact vengeance, speaking words that were both chilling and calculated. For 2 agonizingly long years, Absalom waited with painstaking patience, carefully observing Amnon, studying his routines, and quietly biding his time. King David, caught in the agonizing tension between his love for his children and the horror of Amnon's crime, found himself paralyzed, unable to mete out proper punishment to his eldest son. At last, during a celebratory feast held for the sheep shearers, Absalom decided it was time to put his long-planned scheme into motion. He extended invitations to all of the king's sons, ensuring that Amnon would be among them. As the wine flowed freely and the air was filled with laughter and merriment, the atmosphere abruptly shifted. At a signal from Absalom, his servants sprang into action and carried out the attack. The sharp, unmistakable sound of swords being drawn shattered the festive atmosphere, and within moments Amnon lay dead, his blood pooling on the floor. Chaos erupted as the other princes, gripped by panic, scrambled to flee for their lives. Fearing for his own life, Absalom mounted his mule and escaped to Geshur, the land of his mother's kin. When the devastating news reached David, it struck him like a powerful blow to the chest. His firstborn son, the presumed heir, was dead, killed by the hand of his own brother. The grim prophecy of Nathan had begun to unfold in the most excruciatingly painful way imaginable. Truly, the sword would never depart from David's house, just as the prophet had foretold. For Absalom, the killing of Amnon was far more than a mere act of personal revenge. It marked the first deliberate and calculated step in his ambitious pursuit of the throne of Israel. By removing his most significant rival, Absalom crossed a line from which there could be no turning back. As Absalom departed from Jerusalem, his flowing black hair swept by the wind, he came to the grim realization that his life would never return to what it once was. The beauty that had once earned him admiration and praise would now evoke only fear and suspicion in the hearts of others. He had exchanged the love and admiration of the people for the fleeting and hollow satisfaction of vengeance. Despite everything, Absalom felt no regret for what he had done. To him, this was nothing more than the first step in a much larger plan. He envisioned returning to Israel not as the cherished prince he once was, but as a determined man ready to seize the throne he firmly believed was his by right. In the years that followed, even while living in exile, Absalom's fierce ambition remained undiminished. Instead, he meticulously plotted his eventual return, convinced it would send shockwaves throughout Israel. 3 long years had passed since the day Absalom fled after taking Amnon's life. Those 3 years in Geshur were filled with festering resentment and a deepening resolve to achieve his goals. When Absalom eventually returned, it was not with the pomp and ceremony one might expect, but rather in quiet humility. David's reaction to Absalom's return was restrained and distant. Torn between his deep affection for Absalom and his lingering sorrow over Amnon's death, David permitted Absalom to return to Jerusalem, but avoided any personal contact with him. For 2 full years, Absalom lived within the city walls, yet he was denied any direct audience with the king. During this period of estrangement, however, Absalom was anything but idle. Absalom methodically began to lay the foundation for his next move, positioning himself each morning at the city gates. There he intercepted citizens who came seeking justice from the king, offering them warm greetings and giving them his undivided attention. He listened intently to their complaints, offered them counsel, and assured them of his willingness to help. "If only I were the one in charge," he would remark, his tone dripping with feigned humility. "Then everyone would receive the justice they truly deserve." Gradually but steadily, Absalom managed to win the hearts and loyalty of the people. His dazzling looks attracted their attention, his irresistible charm captivated their hearts, and his enticing promises stirred their hopes. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Absalom forged secret alliances with disgruntled nobles, opportunistic priests, and soldiers hungry for advancement. For 4 years, he continued this charade, using carefully calculated smiles, insincere embraces, and empty promises to build his following. At last, convinced the time was ripe, Absalom approached David with a request for permission to travel to Hebron, claiming he needed to fulfill a sacred vow he had made to God. Blinded by his deep paternal love and a yearning to restore their bond, David consented to Absalom's request without suspicion. Upon arriving in Hebron, Israel's former capital, Absalom set his long-planned rebellion into motion. He dispatched messengers throughout the land with an unequivocal command. "When you hear the blast of the trumpet, proclaim Absalom as king in Hebron." The years of meticulous planning and covert scheming were finally coming to fruition. The rebellion ignited and spread with the speed and intensity of flames racing through a parched field. Men from every region of Israel rallied to Absalom's cause, lured by his captivating charm, unparalleled beauty, and his compelling promises of a fairer and more just kingdom. In Jerusalem, the news of the rebellion struck David with the devastating force of a raging storm. The betrayal of his beloved son, the strikingly handsome Absalom, pierced David's heart like a dagger. The dreadful prophecy of Nathan was unfolding before David's eyes in a manner far more horrifying than he could have ever envisioned. While David made preparations to flee the city, Absalom marched confidently at the forefront of his rebel forces, his flowing black hair trailing in the wind like a banner. The beauty that once earned him admiration now acted as a deceptive mask, hiding the insatiable ambition that burned within him. A looming civil war cast its shadow over the land, setting father against son, outward beauty against seasoned wisdom, and unbridled ambition against steadfast loyalty. The stage was now set for a decisive battle, one that would not only determine the future of the kingdom, but also reveal the true character of Absalom, the man once celebrated as Israel's most beautiful prince. David, the experienced warrior and divinely chosen king, was internally torn and deeply conflicted. While his heart longed desperately for reconciliation with his son, his responsibility as Israel's ruler demanded that he confront the threat to the kingdom's unity. With his eyes brimming with tears, David issued one final command to his commanders: "Be gentle with Absalom." Absalom, riding with confidence astride his mule, his flowing hair cascading around him, radiated with pride and self-assurance. The beauty that had once been his greatest advantage had now fostered a dangerous and unchecked arrogance. He viewed himself not simply as a rebel, but as Israel's destined savior, the one chosen to usher in a new age of unparalleled glory for the kingdom. The piercing sound of trumpets echoed across the land, signaling the beginning of the fierce battle. The clash of steel swords, the anguished cries of soldiers, and the pounding thunder of horses' hooves reverberated through the dense forest. The ground trembled under the weight of the raging battle, while the towering trees stood solemnly, bearing silent witness to the tragic fraternal conflict. As the fierce battle unfolded, Absalom charged boldly through the chaos, his commanding presence stirring courage and determination in his followers. Even amidst the grime and bloodshed of the battlefield, Absalom's beauty retained an almost otherworldly quality. Some of his adversaries found themselves pausing, hesitant to raise their weapons against him, as though harming such a figure of beauty would be a grievous sin. However, the seasoned experience and strategic brilliance of David began to shift the tide of the battle. David's battle-tested veterans, hardened by years of relentless warfare, slowly but surely overwhelmed Absalom's youthful energy and reckless tactics. Gradually, the rebellion was driven back, deeper and deeper into the shadowy depths of the forest. In a desperate attempt to escape, Absalom turned to flee, but destiny, or perhaps divine intervention, had a different outcome in store for him. As he raced beneath the sprawling branches of a great oak tree, his renowned long hair became ensnared in the thick, low-hanging limbs. His mule galloped onward, leaving Absalom helplessly dangling in midair, caught and trapped by the very hair that had once been the source of his pride and admiration. Suspended and utterly defenseless, the once glorious prince was discovered by Joab, the ruthless and unyielding general in David's army. Disregarding King David's explicit command to show mercy to Absalom, Joab seized the opportunity before him. Resolute in his decision to crush the rebellion once and for all, Joab thrust 3 spears into Absalom's chest, piercing his heart and ending his life. News of Absalom's death spread like wildfire, and with their leader gone, the rebellion quickly crumbled into disarray. David emerged as the victor, yet the victory was steeped in profound sorrow and heartbreak. When word of Absalom's death reached David, his anguished cries reverberated through the entire camp. "My son Absalom, my son, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son." Absalom's lifeless body was cast into a deep pit within the forest, and a towering heap of stones was piled upon it, a somber and silent testament to the tragedy of a man whose breathtaking beauty had concealed a heart devoured by ambition. Thus, the life of Absalom, once hailed as the most handsome man in all of Israel, reached its devastating and tragic conclusion. The beauty that could have been a great blessing in his life ultimately became his greatest curse. His unchecked ambition, which might have propelled him to true greatness, instead led to his ultimate downfall. David, who had once stood tall as the fearless warrior king, returned to his capital city a deeply broken and grief-stricken man. His face, once vibrant and brimming with life, was now marked by lines of sorrow, regret, and unbearable heartache. Each step he took was slow and labored, as though the weight of the heartbreaking reality was pressing heavily upon him. He struggled to come to terms with the truth. His beloved son, Absalom, was gone forever. In the days that followed, David's overwhelming grief seemed to seep into the hearts of the entire nation, turning his sorrow into a shared burden. The palace, once alive with music and joyous laughter, now resonated with only hushed sobs and the faint murmurs of subdued conversations. The palace servants moved silently like shadows, careful not to disturb the king in the depths of his mourning. Meanwhile, in the streets of Jerusalem, the people of Israel struggled to come to terms with the aftermath of the rebellion. Many of those who had once been captivated by Absalom's charm and dazzling appearance were now overcome with a profound sense of shame and regret. They came to see that they had been enamored by his outward beauty, blind to the darkness and ambition lurking beneath the surface. In every household and on every street corner, the heavy cost of rebellion became the central topic of reflection and conversation. Families lay in ruins, friendships were irreparably broken, and countless lives were lost, all because of the unchecked ambition of one man who placed his personal desires above the welfare of his people. 3 days after the devastating news of Absalom's death had spread, David finally stepped out of his chambers. His face was pale, his eyes swollen and reddened from countless hours of weeping. Yet there was a newfound steely determination in his gaze. Gathering his trusted advisors, David turned his attention to the monumental task of rebuilding and uniting a kingdom that had been torn apart by the ravages of civil war. David's first act as he sought to heal the kingdom was to declare a solemn 30-day national period of mourning. The entire nation of Israel would mourn, not only for Absalom, but also for the loss of innocence and unity in a kingdom that had risen against its God-anointed king. During this period of mourning, David channeled his overwhelming grief and emotions into composing some of the most heartfelt and poignant psalms of his life. These psalms were brimming with expressions of deep pain, sincere repentance, and ultimately the glimmers of hope that only faith could provide. In one of these psalms, he wrote the enduring words, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those crushed in spirit." As the days of mourning unfolded, a profound and painful lesson began to take shape in the hearts and minds of the Israelites. They had come to understand through painful experience that true beauty originates from within, not from external appearances or physical charm. They recognized that genuine strength is not rooted in physical power or charismatic allure, but in wisdom, humility, and a deep reverence for God. Across the nation of Israel, fathers began imparting lessons to their sons about the perils of unchecked pride and the destructive force of unbridled ambition. The story of Absalom's life became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most outwardly gifted and promising individuals can fall into ruin if they deviate from God's path. Meanwhile, in the heart of the forest of Ephraim, the stone heap that marked Absalom's grave stood as a solemn and enduring reminder of his tragic end. Travelers who passed by the grave would often pause to reflect on the fate of the prince, whose dazzling allure had once captured the hearts of an entire nation, only to lead it to the edge of ruin. It is often said that time heals all wounds. However, for David and the people of Israel, the scars inflicted by Absalom's rebellion remained raw and deeply painful for many years. As the years rolled on, the tale of the handsome prince who came close to tearing a kingdom asunder transformed into a legend passed down from generation to generation. David, now aged and weary from a lifetime of trials, dedicated himself to ensuring that the lessons of Absalom's tragic downfall would be remembered for all time. Calling Solomon, the chosen heir to the throne, to his side, David shared with him the hard-earned wisdom forged through years of pain and experience. "My son," David began, his voice weighted with the emotion of a lifetime's reflection, "never forget that a king's true beauty is not found in his outward appearance, but in the purity and strength of his heart. Absalom was stunning in his outward beauty, yet his soul was consumed by pride and relentless ambition. Do not let yourself repeat the mistakes he made. With an eager and open heart, Solomon listened intently to his father's words, understanding that his responsibility extended beyond ruling Israel. It included mending the deep wounds left by Absalom's rebellion. Reflect for a moment. How often, even in today's world, do we see individuals rise to positions of power or prominence primarily because of their physical appearance or personal charm? From celebrities and influencers to political leaders, many are often elevated not for their wisdom or integrity, but because of the image they present to the world. The story of Absalom reminds us that such superficial beauty is transient and can lead to destruction if it is not paired with inner virtue and humility. Much like Absalom's flowing hair, his emblem of pride, ultimately ensnared him, our culture's fixation on outward image can just as easily lead us into peril. Let us instead, as the psalmist urges, seek the beauty of the Lord, not the superficial beauty of this world. For it is the beauty of a noble character, timeless wisdom, and selfless love that endures through the ages. Absalom's life stands as a somber reminder that physical beauty and unchecked ambition can never substitute for inner strength, divine wisdom, and unwavering faithfulness to God. Despite his undeniable charisma, impressive power, and widespread appeal, Absalom's relentless quest for the throne and betrayal of his father ultimately led him down a tragic path of destruction. In the end, he lost not only the kingdom, but also the love and respect of the people, and, most tragically, his very life. As we contemplate this remarkable story, may it serve as a powerful reminder to us all that genuine beauty comes from within, and true strength is found in faithfully walking in God's ways. Absalom's story acts as a cautionary tale, warning against the dangers of pride and ambition that remain unrestrained by faith. His downfall demonstrates that success pursued without integrity inevitably leads to ruin. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Bible Stories. If this story inspired or enlightened you, we encourage you to give the video a like. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on future content. Additionally, share this video with your church group, family, and friends so they too can benefit from its timeless lessons. Together, let us spread the enduring wisdom of the Bible and help others uncover the profound lessons that remain incredibly relevant even in our world today. May we all strive to pursue the true beauty of noble character, divine wisdom, and steadfast faith as we continue our journey in the light of God's Word. We'll see you again in the next episode.